And we're live.
We're live already now.
Yeah, we are.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We're
Let me take off the hat.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I feel like I should have switched that black shirt today.
No, you're good. You're good. Trying to just adjust the light. Better. All right, welcome. Welcome, guys. Welcome, viewers. I'm Melissa Gumbs. As you know, we are, how many days? 25?
25.
25 days to go until January 11, 2024, the parliamentary elections for the next parliamentary term. I'm joined today on the live stream by Mr. Marlon Hodge, candidate number 9 on the PFP, and MP Raeyhon Peterson, candidate number 2. Today, actually, this live stream is kind of all your show.
Yes.
What are we talking about today?
Today is a big day. We're tackling a few things that have been going on. First topic is the discussion of the abuse of the 6 months contract in the service industry and how it is being affected. Second point is, what are the effects that it has on the population or the service providers that work within this industry, and how do they handle the outcome of all these 6 months contracts and the temporary breaks that they have?
So we're talking tourism, basically,
Yes,
in a nutshell.
100%.
Okay.
Candidate number 9 is here. Mr. Hodge is then to talk about tourism.
But you want to tell people a bit about like why tourism is so passionate to you? Because I know you've talked about it at town halls, but for the benefit of the live stream audience.
Definitely. I wasn't here to the last third point. It's three topics.
Mhm.
Three topics. The third topic is the diversification of tourism and why I think it needs to be diversified, and what are the plans that PFP, along with Mr. Marlon Hodge, has planned
For
for
that.
that. But yeah, why does tourism mean so much to me? Tourism is the backbone of how my whole demeanor is, how I carry myself. I was brought up in tourism. I lost my dad at a very young age. He worked in the tourism industry for years, and it's the last remaining thing that I have to remind myself of who my father was. My whole family has worked around the tourism industry, not necessarily in it to the gravy point as how I have been. I've been in it all over, from chicken to rice, so I've been in it from back to front. I started off working in an Indian restaurant from the age of 13. And
Okay.
all my life, I've stuck with it. It's my first wife.
Yeah. I worked at Sonesta Maho when I came back. Well, when I was coming back for summers, because I went to school in Miami. And I was working in the sales department with Mr. Bernard Hunt. So like big groups, incentives, meetings and other stuff. But before that, when I was a teenager, I was actually a waitress at Cafe Juliana, which which you remember at the old airport, so the Yellow Building airport. And
No AC.
Cafe Juliana had AC, but the rest of the airport did not have AC. That's true. That's true. But so I have a soft spot in my heart for service industry people, because I've been that waitress. That I think one of my worst experiences was I had a big table. Air France had a delay, and it was a table of 8 people, and this is pre-Euro, so we talking about franc. And they sat for hours, they ate, they drank, they made a big mess, and at the end of it, they left a 50-cent franc tip, which at the time it was 7 francs to $1. So I actually couldn't even buy, not even the box that the chicklet comes in with that 50 cents. I ran down the stairs and gave it back to them. And I said, thank you. I think you need it more than me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I and I always I get very frustrated with sometimes how people treat persons in the service industry, because it's not easy. And you guys are actually, the bread and butter of our main economic pillar. So yeah. But you had your 3 points you want to talk about, so
So the first point is, which Melissa just brought up, tourism industry is actually not just vital to me, but vital to everyone. I think once you live in a tourist destination such as St. Martin and other ones, you know that tourism keeps the light in water. Just as everybody else knows, it's the breadwinner. It's the person that you should respect in the household. And if he keeps the light on, you should show him that type of respect. It disgusts me to bring this topic up. I am a victim of this situation many times in my life. So that's why it's a very touching topic. I'm not voicing this concern or awareness from just the people I've heard.
Right.
And it's not a political discussion only for me. It's actually a household discussion that I have with people that I sit down with and I talk with my children on a regular basis, is that we are seeing this 6 month contract that was issued years ago by certain ministers that did not understand, the whole outcome of it. And I've learned that this was designed for the fact that we go through a seasonal industry.
Yeah.
It was supposed to protect employers and employees who would work for that fourth season. And when the off season came about and you didn't need these employees or you didn't need their services anymore, you were able to tell them, thank you so much, much appreciated for all of what you've done. Now, it brings me to the touching matter, because it has now trickled down out of the regular restaurants who go through the seasons, but now it's going into hotels who are open year round, 365 days a year. It has trickled down to casinos who are open 365 days a year.
Almost every business kind of.
Almost every
business,
I mean, if you don't close,
kind of utilizes it,
correct.
From what I've heard,
correct. So these industries are still operating throughout 365 days of the year, but somehow lay off workers and force them into a leave of absence
to reset the clock.
Good analogy. To reset the clock or force you into another 3 month or 6 months contract, to then not give you permanent.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that, Melissa?
Like I said, I've worked for first a restaurant at the airport, and I've worked for, the largest hotel on the island, the biggest employer actually on the island, because if there's one thing I think Maho has done a fairly decent job of, it's keeping people on. And I think I understand where it came from, this, kind of transient, because you do have that as well. You do have persons that kind of go places for season, work the season, and then bus off. You understand? So I think that if it had been kept at that, it might have been a different story. But I think when you apply it to persons who are living here full time, long term,
with family,
it was all with families here to put on roots here. It's always been a difficult concept for me to kind of understand. And I think many politicians have talked about it. I think Ibn Pantiflet most loudly, as well a former immigration officer. But I think we really have, one of my big concerns is now too, is that aside from the 6 month contract, you also see this influx of work that seems to be coming from the northern side of the island, very specific type of person that ends up in most of these new establishments at the beaches, or right up the road, or down the road, or however you want to phrase it. So I'm curious as to how it would go for that, and I think it warrants a further discussion with Labor Department, because we're constantly being told that there's not enough of XYZ here, that majority of the work permits are for, I think it was even to the point of bartenders, service industry personnel, and I'm like, but I don't understand that, because you have them here. So are we giving work permits for people to come here to work for 6 months and then?
That's another touchy topic. I'm gonna take out the filter. I want to keep it raw. When you have certain swanky joints that shall be nameless, but we know the ones who are overpriced, not for the local market, not catering to the average person who can afford a plate in this place. You look around in these establishments, if you do decide to go to these establishments, these restaurants and beach bars, and you watch the service providers that are working in this industry, such as the bartenders, the waiters, and the chefs, you're going to realize that they don't really speak the way you speak. They don't have the same tongue or the twang that we have, and they don't refer to the things the same way as us. Somehow
they don't look like do others.
They somehow seem like they just popped up specifically when times were good, referring to November, December, January, February. And then when times get hard, such as hurricane season, economy shuts down a little bit, people start to leave. And these are the same ones who actually jump on a plane and leave with the money that they've made for the 6 months and the 7 months, and the job description that they had for the last 6-7 months. it's messed up that our local people, and I'm referring to the mom and pops, or the local people that we grew up with that we can name and know by first name basis, that are not working in these such establishments with us
Yeah.
and providing the services towards us. So I think that's another discussion to have
Yeah.
too. I didn't even think about that, but yeah.
Yeah, but how does that and how does but because
does
I
it
think I
work?
think a lot of people kind of wonder, well, okay, well, if you work 6 months here, then you go somewhere else and you work 6 months there. But how does that has to have some impact on
The
planning
economy?
life? No, on planning life for the person.
You see, when
Because you can't I would reckon you can't really go for a loan or anything like that.
Oh, yeah, that brings me to the second.
Yeah,
well,
if
that's
you
that's why in Holland, because there's a lot of funding and because Holland is basically a federation, they pretty much have these things regulated in the general law, the Wetten, the civil code actually. And one of the things when it comes to the labor contracts is that Holland has a very specific rule. If you have had three non-permanent contracts for the same employer, the fourth one is a permanent one.
yeah.
Period. There is no way to go around it. And if you do have non-permanent contracts and it reaches to a point of 3 years, then automatically you also become bust. And in Holland, most of the labor contracts, they're basically regulated through the CIOs, the collective
Yeah.
arbeidsondereenkomst. And we're kind of like not there yet. You would want the unions to be like the one to take the forefront on this matter. But of course, they would need to do it in collaboration with government because you can legislate it. By the end of the day, if you put all businesses in a dire strait by doing that, then you're basically gonna make everybody go bankrupt.
Yeah. I think that second part you mentioned is that even if the period totals up
Two,
a certain
3
amount of
years.
time, that
Yeah.
then it also, because I think that's been part of the abuse that has happened, in that you keep getting 6 month contracts for the better part of 3-4 years sometimes, from what I've heard from
Yeah.
certain establishments.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I personally know of a person who works for a casino, and she's been working there for about 15 years, and she still doesn't have a permanent contract. Yeah, she's been getting 6 months, 6 months, and then they let her go for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
They ask her to leave, basically, like unofficially, nicely,
Yeah.
and then she comes back, and of course that's her livelihood. So she's been doing it for all that time. But if this was Holland, for example, within a third year, she would have been permanent
Yeah, of
already.
course.
And when you're not permanent, you can't go to the bank, you can't get a mortgage.
Yeah.
It's a lot of things ripples down from that. But yeah, it's an issue that we can't just legislate. It's especially in St. Martin, it's a real joint venture. You have to talk to the private sector as well because you don't want to put anybody in the corner either. But yeah, it's a touchy subject.
Yeah, a lot of times it comes down to that thing, like you said. The two things that a lot of people are looking for. You want to locate capital. You want to be able to stabilize your life and stabilize it
Yeah.
and elevate. Grow. You don't work just for working's sake. Nobody wants to just, excuse my French, piss in a can and then watch it
Yeah.
just drain out. You know what I mean? But you want to then try to build on it and have building blocks that
Yeah.
are then liable to carry on for your family, or legacy per se for grandkids and so on. But now we have so many service providers that are now generating this income that they're not sure when it's going to stop, and they know for a fact it's not locked forever. They're living in fear, they're living in worries, and they're living in fright, and it causes them to either work twice as hard
Yeah.
during this short period of time in the casino life, not casinos per se, but they're gambling with their life and
Yeah.
their future because they don't know if they're going to be able to provide for their kids or their grandkids. When banks take a meeting with you, there's something called your DSR, and they watch how much you can afford to pay per year. If you can't declare your your tips, you can't get taxed on your tips, which is also a gray area. Government does not say you can't. It's just that they don't make it easy to declare tips. So your income, such as the $5 per minimum, which Ray always touches on, it is the minimum. It is not the maximum you are supposed to pay. It is the bare minimum that you're supposed to pay. And P. Peterson has improvised on it so many times. It's something that he champions all the time. But somehow, along with the labor contracts that are abusing, they're forcing most service providers to take the bare minimum and then try to qualify in the bank on a 6 months of that bare minimum.
Yeah.
So if you have ever done the calculation, which is completely easy, I think you can calculate how much that is. It is not a lot. And when you do the DSR, what the bank recognizes, you are not qualifying for
Yeah, for
nothing within
anything.
6 months at $5 per hour,
Yeah.
and that's only thing that the banks look at. So I do also have friends that have been in the same establishment, working the same industry, the same place with the same boss under a 6 months contract, and have went to the bank 2, 3 times and made themselves look like like
Food.
Yeah, like
fools
fools. Yeah.
because they don't know why the bank doesn't respect their tips. Oh, I
Yeah.
made this amount of money. Yeah, but
But
your employer
that's
said,
not what it says. Yeah, officially. That's
and
interesting. Now that's
that's
interesting.
hard.
Yeah,
That's
that is
hard
hard
when you look at it.
because what it does too is it kind of it pushes hustle culture, and that's not necessarily
Yeah.
a bad thing. But when you have so many people, because our service industry is huge,
Yep.
so hustle culture was never meant to be
Part of the main.
70% of your
Yeah,
population.
exactly.
You understand? So I think that's also part of the concern because then people will stretch themselves too thin, and it trickles down into everything else. If you're
Causes
overworking
stress,
yourself, it causes stress, causes anxiety, leads you to not be present in the home if you have children, blah, blah, mental health issues,
that
and
you
it
can't
goes down.
identify
Yeah,
so easy.
basically. And I guess it also too kind of from an access to healthcare perspective, it also kind of frustrates that possibility.
It makes a very stressful economy,
Yeah.
very stressful, disgruntled economy that is not feeling very stabilized and running this rat race that they don't know when it's going to end. And that's something that brings me to the third topic, which I really, really, really am passionate about again, because I think tourism industry is forever going to be our bread and butter. Now we just have to now liquidate it and diversify it, make it more profitable for us.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen so many other foreigners come here and they open up establishments, comes back. We've seen all the brand new restaurants. We've seen
Yeah.
new hotels that certain ministers are bragging about that came about, which we all know that they were in the pipelines for years because I
Yeah.
worked with them and I know some of the owners who said, "Oh, I'm coming back. It's not a problem. Just fix your airport and I'll be here."
Yeah.
They've been here. So even though he or she is glorifying, oh, these hotels are now opening up and
Yeah.
they're expanding their culture and looking to hire us.
A lot of it's just corporate decisions too. I think I posted about that because I don't know how you can brag about a decision made in
Way before
way
you.
before you, and also 5,000 miles away in a
Correct.
boardroom in North
Correct.
Carolina.
So yeah, so when you see those discussions coming up, these 5-star hotels, I ask people all the time, don't be fooled by it. It's been here for
Yeah.
years. All these hotels have been here. Now we get some big brand names, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to abuse the 6 months contract. That's still on the table. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean that they're going to pay higher rates. It's still on the table.
Yeah.
I doubt these ministers have actually approached these guys and say, "Hey, what are your adjustments to the 6 months contract? Are you going to offer 6 months contract?
Yeah.
Are you going to continue the 6 months contracts? Or are you going to try to offer a better minimum wage and actually
Better than
categorize it by their qualifications and
Yeah.
how and what their
How long
values
you've been
are?
in the industry.
You
But then
know,
how do you diversify? Because a lot of people have talked about that. We have, as a party, we've talked about finding what actually works for us. Because right now, what you see with our tourism industry is that we kind of try to be everything all at once. So we try to be luxury, trying to compete with St. Bart's. We try to be family, trying to compete with like the Arubas of this world. We try to be like a
Party
Ibiza,
life,
the party
cheap
life,
alcohol and
trying to
cigarettes.
compete with St. Bart's and other places. So it's kind of like
What is our identity?
what is our identity as a tourism destination? And now there's been a lot of talk from this government about becoming a ecotourism kind of destination, but
Have
No
we ever
plans have
gone
been-
green?
but no real plans have been set forward. And I know that we've talked a bit about like your um passion about having our monuments play a bigger role in attracting people to the country. And we in parliament we've had this discussion with the minister when he used to come to parliament.
Yeah.
He hasn't been for a very long time, with the minister of education, culture, youth and sports, because that falls kind of in his realm.
Yeah.
And the thing that a lot of people don't know is that the Monuments Council needs a monument fund. And there's been discussions about that. And he said, well, it's coming. But here we are,
Yeah,
25 days
4 years
away
later.
from an election
4 years later, we haven't heard
and no
anything
monument
about that.
fund.
I think definitely we would want to see the monuments play in our culture because I think we have an identity crisis. Now, Nelly Blaze has spoken about that, candidate number 7 on the PFP. He has said that we don't know how to identify ourselves and we are a mixed culture. We need to simplify it and figure out what is our identity. And it also trickles down to what Melissa just said. We also want to know exactly what is our advertisement point for our tourism. What do we want our tourism to look like? We want to diversify. That's something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
But what is the direction that you want to go and what do you want to see our tourism in? I have talked about diversifying towards agriculture style, and I've also talked about diversifying in a culture style. In other words, rekindling our history, such as we are a sugar cane and salt mill, salt island, and we used to make a lot of revenue on that. Now we have a salt mill that's located in Phillipsburg, Sucker Garden area on the Bonfield that is no longer operational, and I think it should be made into a natural park and slash tourist tourist
attraction. Yeah,
and the same goes for the rest.
I think maybe this is also interesting for you to kind of hop in on, Ray, because you also have this phenomenon where you have monuments that sit on private land. But
and
then, but and that's a touchy topic because, like, for example, you have, I don't want to call her name, but there's a house in Front Street that a friend of mine has been complaining about because she was not getting help from government, but then also not getting any kind of like feedback from requests to actually repair, this house, to classify it first of all as a monument, which is where the Monuments Council comes in and their fund comes in. But can you explain a bit about why, like, what should be a monument, a beacon of our heritage is not actually protected, or why it can't be touched by government directly? Because
well, the thing is with the Monument Council, it's sort of a little island in the Ministry of Education, but there is no kind of cohesion with the Ministry of Roaming because only the Ministry of Roaming can, touch any building. But also when it comes to the land, it's also the Ministry of Roaming. When it's private land, it's a little different, but that's when the monument, there's a monument national ordinance. And within that national ordinance, it says you have to make a monument decree, monumental besluit. That has been made. That is actually what brings the Monument Council to life. Yeah. And within that monumental besluit, and you can read it, you can Google it. It specifically says, what needs to be deemed as a monument, but then also how do you designate something as a monument. But that means that, like you said, you would have had to have a working monument council, because to assign something as a monument, that's a whole process.
Yeah.
And it's all regulated within that same monumental besluit. But unless you go down that route, unless you know that that's the road you have to go on, you can go ask Vromi about it, to fix it or whatever. Vromi is just going to tell you it's not our prerogative whether or not it's a monument. In private land, that's even worse, because Vromi is going to tell you we don't know anything about it because it's private land.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to get to the Ministry of Education and then see if you can get some type of communication about it. But I personally don't know of any case where the monument, maybe we can ask Patrice.
Yeah.
If the Monument Council is actually that active in these requests, because
I think they try to be, but it's part of, again, going back to the fund that they've been waiting to be established to be able to conduct, whatever is in their actual besluit, in their decree.
Because in the decree, it also speaks about a sort of a working relationship with us as MPs.
Yeah.
Through the minister, of course. But I actually have it in front of me. And for example, in Article 3, it says the Monument Council has a task to either, if we request it or not, to inform the minister or Parliament about anything that has to do with the care for these monuments, or what needs to be done, or the budget that needs to be coming to them to be able to fix whatever monuments. The monument decree, it regulates it, but yeah, like you said, over legislation is nice, but if we can't execute it, if we don't have the funds in place, then these laws are nice. They're there, are like we always say, our system is a codified system.
Yes,
that
very well
tends
codified.
to be pretty what to the date, as you call it. But to execute it, it's something different. And we have people who are actually in the Monument Council, but like you said, if you don't have the money and if it's not regulated in a way that the ministry can funnel the money, then yeah, it's just gonna go stuck, and you're gonna have these ad hoc cases where you have a house that might or might not be designated as a monument, but until you get to that point, and even if you get to that point, what then? Who's gonna fix it?
Yeah.
Because if it's a monument, then as per that moment, only the monument council can arrange
Yeah,
for
I
it
can
to be
arrange for it to
fixed.
be touched. Yeah.
So whoever the friend is, they can't touch it at all,
Yeah.
and we don't want to go down that route. But that's kind of like how tricky it becomes when it comes to monuments.
Yeah.
So yeah, nice subject, but unless the Minister of Education gets actively involved in what is monumental zorg, as they call it, then yeah, it's
25 days.
yeah, 25 days, guys.
25 days. But I think Marlon, maybe too, like, because coming, not me coming like fully from the service industry, but something that I always used to wonder is you have a lot of like properties, businesses, etc., that they do complain when we go through a slow season, etc. But I always thought that there should be a little more work done on the public-private partnership side of things, that they can also contribute to this kind of cultural diversification that you talk about. So like just say, well, you're coming here to build, you're here already. Can they make a contribution? But I think we also, at the same time that I think that, I also remember that there's a deep concern in private sector that whatever money they put forward doesn't actually go to where it has to go.
It's a big discussion with a lot of investors all around the Caribbean, not just us.
Yeah.
Where they come up and they say, well, I want to invest in your island. I want to come and build a hotel, or I want to come and build a tourist attraction, some type of attraction. And the governments tend to say, well, can you give something back to our community?
Yeah.
But it never says community. It says,
Yeah.
can you give me something? And that has always been a heavy stereotype. But I think a lot of the ministers and also government officials in general, if they have a foreign investor approaches, they need to make sure that foreign investors give back to the community, and it should be transparent, and it should have a lot of truth to it. And that's something that has to be held to these investors before they get issued permits or before they can construct what they're supposed to construct. Because
Yeah.
there's a particular person that was supposed to do the expansion for the boardwalk.
I was waiting for it.
And he never built the boardwalk, but somehow is building or expanding his projects as we speak. No disrespect to that person. A businessman can be a businessman. He can do what he needs to do.
Yeah.
But he needs to keep his promise and keep his word. I grew up in a household knowing your word is your bond.
Yeah.
And if you say you're going to do something.
That's been one of the biggest problems, Marlon, to be honest, because I come from the Ministry of Romy, and I remember when I was in Domain, and I used to propose to the then SG to come up with some regulations within these draft ministerial decrees, when it comes to issuing of land, to, tie whoever is going to get the land along these holders to certain necessities that, government would need, that would work in government's interest.
Yeah.
And like you said, big permits. We have approved $1 million permits, and it's crazy to me that these permits do not come with some type of environmental clause, some type of labor clause, because if we're talking about protecting the local market and protecting the local environment, then these conversations need to be had. If you're going to invest 30 million, then I want to see some of that flow into my local labor market. I don't want to see you fly in everybody to build whatever you want to build and then let them go, because that means that you're funding the money between yourselves. The same thing when it comes to any other type of agreement. We can have a lot of these businessmen fix up some of these schools. We are pretending as if government is the only way to go forward with these things, but then we always complain about the budget not being there.
Yeah.
Well, or not having the money.
Well, then why aren't PPPs an option? Why can't we say, well, you want to build this big hotel, that's the problem. Yeah. We have an auditorium there that has been needing a fixing for quite a while. Invest $500,000 in it and then see how it goes.
It's beyond the fixing.
And break it down. And guess what? Even if they do all of that, that would still
a drop in the bucket.
Less than 1% of what their building costs would be for whatever project that they want. And these are the facts. These are the numbers. But when you get to the discussions with these big developers and it reaches to that point, it's much easier to become friends with them than actually go through with what is supposed to be done in the best interest of the country. And that's putting it vague, but that's also telling you exactly how the situation is at the moment.
And how it actually develops, so to speak. There's a lot of, so I had an idea that well, we talked about it a bit too, cracking up the tourism ministry because we have very big
Oh,
ministries.
definitely.
In
Definitely.
other islands, I think in Bermuda, I'm not sure, I have to check, but you have tourism and actually culture lumped under one because the culture drives the tourism,
Yeah.
vice versa. And the tourism, the money that comes from it helps protect, the culture and such. And
If that's your identity,
yeah.
then it would make sense.
yeah, and I'm curious as to how like we will go about doing that, just for,
Yeah.
hypothetically speaking, how would one accomplish that?
Well, you can do it. It's two ways to do it, but it comes down to the same thing. It would need to be an interministerial, collaboration. And right now, tourism falls under TEAT, but as we know, sports tourism is also, a
Yeah.
big part of tourism. But that's under the Ministry of Education. That has absolutely nothing to do with the Ministry of TEAT. But then, where is the cohesion? Because if you don't have communication with these ministries, and like we say, the ministries right now act as if it's all islands, separate
Silos, yeah.
islands. Yeah, they're separate silos, and nobody really has any type of collaboration going on with each other unless it's for a specific project. Tourism touches every project, every ministry. So when it comes to tourism, we can look at Bromi. When it comes to tourism, we can look at education. When it comes to sports tourism, so these what's the medicinal tourism? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that
Cannabis
is
industry.
Yeah.
That's totally.
so all of that is things that you would have to look in different ministries. Okay, this part is what I have to take from the VSI ministry, which touches the healthcare, etc., which is also a sort of a tourism. All of that is just international markets that you cannot just funnel through one ministry of there that is also in charge of telecommunication and these other stuff. It's not going to work. So the minister of Teyat has a lot on his plate, and you can see that because every time that the minister comes into play, there's only one or two projects that gets done, and then it just fades out.
Yeah.
Like we're seeing right now. The taxis came in, and then what now? It's all confusion. It's
Yeah.
all back to Parliament,
Yeah.
and then nothing comes from the ministry up until the election. So
And I think to before we wrap up, I think at the heart of it, Marlon, which is something that you've talked a bit about, like in our regular meetings and such. Um, what role do people play in actually making it possible for us to have this type of diversification, where we push more towards like cultural tourism, agriculture, volunteerism, all of these different types of niches that we're kind of trying to like see where we fit. Because I think too, what I think a lot of regular people maybe don't quite appreciate or understand just how dependent we are on seeing these planes land. I won't necessarily say the ships because I think cruise is just mass tourism, and I think it kind of benefits
Cheapens your product.
a few people, yeah, and there is the argument that it cheapens the product. But I think if you're not renting ATVs, you don't have a big bus. There's not much
much to
else
do.
to do.
that really
Yeah.
pops for you for when with cruise. So I think people don't really get that when the planes land, that's good, but also we have a role to play in keeping them here because a lot of times when the planes land, they're bebopping up to the north or they're going to Anguilla
Or they're going to an all-inclusive
or they're
resort.
going, yeah, that too. But
And then they get a whole capture. I think that is so deep, 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 deep. Don't have enough time to go through it, but I'm gonna keep it vague and keep it kind of light. When you have so many different types of ways to differentiate tourists and differentiate what is tourism, you have to then go back to the old school ways of somebody just traveling for knowledge, traveling for exposure. I think the local community have a lot to offer when it comes to cuisine. Cuisine can diversify itself from within cocktails, ingredients, and a way of preparation of meals. Then you can diversify even deeper into maritime, which is the water activities and the cultures that are around that, such as the fisheries and how you protect the fisheries and where do we fish and what are the type of fish and the medicinal uses of certain types of fish and eggs or whatever the case. And the same goes for agriculture department, the farmers, the ones who cultivate grains, herbs, spices, whatever, and bottle
When we
it for
establish
teas, foods,
yeah,
every form. And then you can go down to, of course, cannabis, which has so many different medicinal uses, but then
Yeah.
it would also transfer down to health purposes, which is health tourism or or what's the word? What's the word?
Medical tourism, yeah,
Medical tourism. So the medical tourism
And it
also,
also touches the Ministry of Finance when it comes to how to tax these different industries. So
yeah,
you open up, the Pandora's box, but that's a good thing because those are the industries that need to be regulated at the moment
yeah,
because they're not.
yeah.
Everything else is kind of overregulated, but when it comes to those specific industries, the LB humps are not in place, the lunch are not in place, things that should be in place but have not been executed. So
Which then
yeah,
brings us to our question in the chat, which comes from Cam saying, with the push for improving, conserving our environment, what policies or legislation need to be in place for tourism activities so tourism activities don't continue to disrupt our environment?
well, it depends on which tourism activities. Are we talking about building?
I think construction would be the
Yeah,
main thing. We've talked on this live stream before about the impact on the lagoon with all this hillside construction happening in the
yeah.
Cold Bay, Simpson Bay area, with the runoff in particular. Um, you tried to raise the question in the budget amendment discussion about the issuing of new water rights
Yeah,
all the way down Kupukoi
yeah,
that might
because
require dredging the channel.
yeah, and you see when it comes to these specific issues, it's kind of per case. So you really have to look at the area. When we look at the lagoon, we look at the Kobe Lagoon, and we look at the lagoon going all the way up in the Point Pirouette. If you look at the bottom of the lake, if you, I mean, we've done our captain's license, so we've talked, to our instructor, and he's explained to us, where we were just going through the lagoon. If any piece of garbage that we see, we had to pick it up
Pick it up,
ourselves.
yeah, yeah.
And he told us that is not even close to enough because the whole bottom is filled with dirt. You have boats that have sunk that
Pieces
need
of wrecks,
that need
yeah.
to be salvaged. We ourselves went out with a boat once and we couldn't anchor because there was no solid ground to
Yeah,
anchor. It's
there's
all
nothing to anchor it.
yeah. So when it comes to the whole health aspect and the environment of the whole lagoon, it needs to be cleaned.
Yeah.
The attention needs to be on reviving what was the Cold Bay Lagoon because the bottom of it it's dead. And that goes all the way up to Point Pirouette, where you have a canal, where boats are supposed to move. And now, what do you do if you give a made brief that goes into said canal? And that was actually the reason that I asked that question because we always like to overextend our hand when it comes to issuing long lease land, water parcels. The same thing with Alegria to want to give out 14,000 square meters of water rights, but with what plan?
Yeah.
How are we going to protect whatever is going to come there? And the Vromi ministry, Vrom, they actually have a lot of people that are working on these environmental things, like Melissa Peterson, for example. Nicholas Gedison is also in that industry. And when these projects come into play, I don't see those departments getting actively involved, and that is where the problem lies because it all falls down to the minister and his due diligence. Are you going to these relevant departments asking for their input? Are you going to the Nature Foundation and asking for whatever research that they did on the lagoon these last couple of years to import that into whatever rules and regulations you're going to place for said long lease because it needs to come with rules.
But I wanna ask too on the topic of policies and legislation. That's fine. That's one part of it. But something we've talked about a lot in Parliament and in our candidate meetings is enforcement is our biggest issue.
Yeah.
And so, what role does inspectorate play in safeguarding and in executing these policies?
Yeah.
For example, you have a few developments that are popping up now lagoon side, and I stick on a lagoon because everyone touts the profitability of the lagoon, but that profitability is slowly waning because you're going to come to a point in time where you're overcrowding it, and it's going to be near impossible for anyone to come in, and nobody's going to bring in their $100 million yacht to be scratched,
Exactly.
parking up next to another $100 million yacht. But like for example, I noticed they're behind what is Pineapple Pete, and then next to it, that building in the back there, they filled in.
Yeah.
They've built essentially what looks like a little dock.
Mhm.
Like, what avenue do you have to complain about that? And do our complaints listen to? And even if they are, and you send inspectorate, what can they do?
Yeah, you see, this would how the law is set up at the moment when it comes to Vromi, that specific aspect, it requires an active role from the minister because when it comes to inspection, inspection is organization, so it's not a department, so it doesn't fall under the SG. So when it comes to a building stop, etc. All of that would need to be signed by the minister.
Mm.
And so that means that the minister needs to have an active role when it comes to inspection. But that's normal. If you're the Ministry of Romi, inspection is the department that goes out day by day to stop either people who are building without a building permit, people who are building against their building permit regulations, people who are just doing illegal activity, and you have, the mandate to go and tell them, listen, you're on public property, you need to stop.
Yeah.
You don't have the hindrance permit for this, you don't have the building permit for this, you don't have the land rights for this. But if you're not active with your inspection department, then that's not going to work, because when you give off a piece of land, that's nice, but within that draft decree or that administrative decree that you get, it says within 6 months you're going to have to start building, or within 2 years. It depends on what the minister's prerogative is. But at some point, you're going to have to send inspection to check. Listen, these 6 months have passed. These 2 years have passed. According to this decree, if you don't build within these 6 months, your decree is invalid.
Yeah.
You understand? So those type of things, they need to be followed up on. But what we have in Vromi right now is we give off land or we give off building permits, and that seems to be the success point. That's it. Whatever happens after that is going to be a reaction. Oh my God, somebody's building over their boundary. Now is the time to react. Well, they were building up to that point too,
Exactly.
and nobody told them anything up until it was too late.
Yeah.
So it's all reactive instead of proactive. So the inspection department, it's a small department. It's not a lot of people, but the infrastructure management department is more than 100 people. So it's up to the Ministry of Romi to be like, okay, I'm going to dispatch everybody to this area to make sure that everybody's, just following the same rules that I gave them in this ministerial decree or this building permit. So yeah, it comes back to the Minister of Romi, guys.
Marlon, to end off, what would be your dream, vision, top 3 things you'd like to see our tourism industry kind of
go in the direction
of, yeah.
Go in the direction of resurrection of culture. Make sure go in the direction of local homegrown businesses, mom and pops, being fostered in an environment where they can strive. And last but least, make us, unique from every other island and eco-friendly harmony. Tourism needs to play with our ecosystem, and it should not play against it. It shouldn't eradicate us. It shouldn't wipe us out. It should play with us. It should not be something of a secondary nature. It should be blinking form. You always told me the story, and up to this day, I think it's crazy. I'm trying to remember, was it Antigua? Hello Tourists.
Turks and Caicos.
Turks and Caicos
Yes.
came up with something.
It was a project from KPMG, actually, yeah, with Turks and Caicos.
What was affecting their tourism? They transformed it as a way of life. Every single day, they had tourists that they would see, and every single person, down to students, kids,
yeah, hello tourists,
would say hello tourists.
and
when Melissa told me the story, I was like, just picturing it.
Yeah.
They would just literally see it, hello tourists, and how can I help you? The next following question. So I would like to see tourism becoming a way of life for us, and an everyday way that it doesn't feel like work. And I would like to see people walk out of their door and be able to say those words, hello tourists, and how can I help you? Maybe not hello tourists, but hello, how can I help you?
Yeah.
Something that gives us the name, the Friendly Island.
Again.
Yeah.
Actually, if I had to simplify it, let's not make that sentence a lie anymore.
But it's like that. That also is like, I would like to see us as well, just improve kind of our service industry. And I hope that the great work that's being done with the culinary students at, for example, NEPA, because I go there for lunch sometimes. I hope that those kids are encouraged to go further, because a lot of them have what, I recently had a meeting where they mentioned they look for the hospitality gene, because there is the belief that some people are just built for it and some people are not. And again, having worked at Maho, which also had its sister hotel, Great Bay, I always used to remark at the differences sometimes in the restaurants, because you had persons in Great Bay who were built for that, and they were always the ones that were killing it with the tips, and everything. But on the other hand, I had quite a few
zombies
who were not built for it. And I think that's also important to note, is that attentiveness, and the fact that yeah, this is our bread and butter, as you say. Now, thank you very much for coming and sharing your concerns, guys, and also for the legislative and policy insight, Ray. Because sometimes it's I think what Ray touched on too is something that we talk about a lot, which is that ministry should not operate as a silo, and something that I think that we should maybe add it as a deal breaker is that if you're gonna invite us to the dance of a coalition, then if PFP has a ministry, the deputy has to come from the opposite squad
Yeah.
and vice versa.
No,
Because that's what
no,
contributes to the
exactly,
silo-ness
no.
of everything.
I 100%
Basically.
agree. Me and Melissa spoke about this, and especially when it comes to these ministries. When it comes to coalition talks, we have witnessed it from afar, not being part of none. But we have been privy to the convos, to say the least. And how it works is, like Melissa always says, it's like a cake, and they deal it up, and that's your slice, and this is my slice. But if we have a plan together and we're going to work towards a coalition accord, that means that your MPs and my MPs are supposed to be within the same area of expertise, and we're going to have the same vision. So if I'm going to take the Ministry of VSA, for example, as PFP, then I would encourage my coalition partner, for whoever they may be, to have somebody from each party, pick somebody to be in the cabinet. And those persons have to be qualified, of course, but of course can come from that camp.
Would
Why?
be a deputy as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, because you have to have that type of cohesion as ministries, because the council of ministers, they meet every Tuesday and every Thursday. So the law expects us to have communication at all times and to be aware of whatever the other one is doing, so that we can never come to parliament and say, "Oh, that's not my business. That's that ministry." The law actually says that if me as an MP ask a question to the Minister of Education, but it concerns Romy as well, he is obligated by law to either answer my question, or he has a responsibility to relay my question as an MP to his sitting colleague minister.
Yep.
And they together have the responsibility to bring me back an answer. That is how the law is supposed to work when it comes to parliament and ministers. So that's a good topic that you touched, Jamel, because that is exactly what we are going to propose as PFP as well. Any coalition partner thinks that they're going to operate a ministry from within a silo while everybody else is trying to be part of a team, it's not going to work.
No, it's not.
We want to have integrity in all ministries, because it reflects on all of us if we are going to join any coalition.
Yep, basically. But yeah, thank you. And 25 days.
Yes, sir.
25 days. This is our last live stream until we come back from in January. I think it's the last.
Due to the fact that it is the season of greetings.
Yes.
We want to respect the family time.
Yeah, for sure. So Tuesday we have our St. Peter's Town Hall at 7 p.m. at the community center. On Thursday we have our Cahill Town Hall at D-Ways Restaurant. So those are our last two official campaign events
For the year.
for the year. We're gonna shut it down for Christmas. Well, not officially a campaign event, but Friday is our last happy hour as well. I heard you're going to be cooking us, mixing us up a
Usually
special
cooking up.
Christmas cocktail.
Yeah.
The drinks last time were great though. The cocktails, like,
Thank you.
yeah, actually a mixologist. Look at that.
Oh, I'm not just doing the happy hour thing the fluke way, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were playing dominoes.
Yeah, no.
Like another.
No, but they were good. They were really good. And it come good to the point where I might try the gin one, because that was like, and I don't like gin. I'm not a person that likes it, but we'll see.
And the more she drank, the better her dominoes get.
Idiot.
Yeah, I saw that. She was cutting tail on the table.
Yeah, no, but definitely come out to our last happy hour for the year.
Yes.
That's on Friday the 22nd. We kick it off. Well, we're there from about 5:36 either way. So pass through on your way home from work, on your way home from Christmas shopping. You don't have to bring us gifts. We will have the cocktails ready for you, as well as a good game of dominoes.
Yep.
So that's it. And see you guys, and have a great rest of the Sunday evening.